Yes, happening people. Okay, so today I'm coming to you beardless. Yeah, the beard had to go, but only temporarily. But yeah, I'm coming to you beardless because I'm going to talk about something that's been on my mind for quite some time now, actually. So I figured it's time to sit down, do another serious Sunday video, even though this may or may not be going out on a Sunday, but hey. But it's the idea that success could be limited. You know, how much success we have at any one time could be limited. And, you know, it's kind of a theory, kind of a philosophy, maybe more of an underdeveloped idea. But yeah, if you'd like to hear me babble on about why success could be limited, stick around. Alright, so for simplicity and clarification, in this video, when I say success, I'm really talking about more traditional measurements of success. Money, fame, status, power, you know, that sort of thing. The types of stuff that we traditionally associate with success. Because in truth, success is really what you make it. You know, you decide what is successful for you. You decide what your goals are. You decide what you're trying to achieve in this world. And as such, you decide what your measurements of success are. So for this video, this particular video, when I say success, I'm just really referring to money, power, status, you know, the traditional measurements of that we associate with being successful. And I think that could be limited. I think the amount of money you can have at any one time is limited. I think the amount of power you can have at any one time is limited. The amount of status, all these things are limited. And what I mean by that is, if you imagine, let's say, going to the gym and you try to bench press, and you can bench press, say, 10 kilograms, right? And that's the maximum that you can bench press on that day is 10 kilograms. That is your limit. 10 kilograms is the limit that you can bench press, right? What happens if you try to bench press 100 kilograms? Right, you'll probably choke. It will crush you. You hurt yourself. And I think it's the same sort of thing when it comes to money, when it comes to power, when it comes to status and all these sorts of things, fame and everything else. That how much you have at any one time is limited. And when we try to go beyond that limit before we're ready, we hurt ourselves, or maybe we hurt somebody else. You know, something happens because we're going beyond the limit that before we're ready to do so. So going back to the sort of gym analogy, like the limit is 10 kilograms on that day. So what you do, you practice lifting 10 kilograms, right? You practice that. And then over time, you get good at lifting 10 kilograms, and to the point where 10 kilograms becomes really easy for you. So then you go up a little bit to 15 kilograms and you practice with that. And that gets over time becomes easy. Then 20 kilograms and 25, but you gradually increase. And I think we need to take that same kind of attitude when it comes to, you know, success. You know, if we have £1,000 now, right? Going from £1,000, you know, if you have £1,000, you know how to live with £1,000. You figure out how to live with £1,000, and you get used to that, and you do that over a period of time. Well, maybe not £1,000. That's probably a bit too, but you know what I mean. Whatever the money that you have right now is that you get used to living that. You figure out how you pay your bills, what you need to have, what you don't need to have, you know, and how you do things when you do things. You figure out how to live with the money that you earn now. But if you go from that to all of a sudden having £100 million, right? That's a crazy jump, right? And I think when that happens, oftentimes we're not really ready to have that kind of money. We've gone too far too soon. So it leads to making bad decisions. It leads to, you know, maybe being in a poor mental state. In fact, it's not uncommon for, you know, people who win the lottery, for example, to end up broke within a few years. In fact, I read something that about 70% of lottery winners end up broke within a few years. And I think that's part of the reason, that you've just gone beyond the limit before you were ready. Rather than going from, say, £1,000 to, you know, £1,500 and then for 2,000 and figuring those out along the way, you went straight from 1,000 to 10 million. And that difference is such a stretch, is such a massive gap that we haven't had time to practice what it means to now have 10 million pounds. We only know how to live with 1,000. So now you got 10 million. The decisions you make, you know, having that kind of money is like, oh, I could buy this, I could do that, and you could do all these things, and before you know it, you're broke again. You know, you're back to being broke again. Sometimes with less money than you had to begin with. And I think that's the same thing with money. I think it's the same thing with power. You know, sometimes you find yourself, if you're somebody who's maybe lived a lot of their life where you've always had a boss, you've always had, you know, somebody telling you what to do, or you've always felt like you haven't had much control over certain situations, and then you go from that to all of a sudden having power. You know, now you're the manager, or now you're the boss. You know, that power shift, that difference can be a lot for some of us. You find that people don't always make the best decisions. People find that, hey, now I'm in charge, you know, and this whole thing about power getting abused happens. You know, we see that a lot of the time. People being, whether it's abusive at work, because now it's like, well, I can get away with it, I have the power. You know, part of our brain does that because we haven't had the time to practice what it means to be in a position of authority. So I think like what needs to happen is that we need to understand that where we are is where we are, and it's not that we can't have more than what we have, but I think we first need to get good at what we have, and then go a little bit more, and then a little bit more, and then a little bit more, rather than trying to go too far too soon. Because we don't really talk about the limits of money. We don't really talk about the limits of power. We celebrate people with lots of money, lots of power, lots of all this sort of stuff, but we don't really think about what it took to get there. And oftentimes you find with like billionaires and that sort of thing is that they didn't get to that spot nicely. You know, there's a lot of people that got screwed along the way. You know, a lot of people that got hurt, a lot of people whose lives were ruined. You don't always hear about it, but it happens, right? And even in the process of making that money, like even the people who are at the companies that these billionaires are running, they're not doing, a lot of them aren't doing so well. So, but we're not really talking about, okay, can you go from being a poor person to a billionaire without destroying lives along the way? Because I feel like we just go too far too soon, and we don't really figure out what it means to have the money that we have now, and then have the little bit more, and then a little bit more. We're just trying to get the money, get the money, get the money. We're not really thinking about what we're doing to get there, who we're hurting to get there, whose lives are being ruined, how much are we ruining ourselves mentally, physically, to have this money, to have this power, to maintain this thing that we don't always know how to maintain outside of destroying people, because those are usually the initial thoughts that come to us. And I think we need to figure out first what we have, figure out how to sustain that in a healthy way, figure out how to sustain more in a healthy way, figure out how, and rather than trying to get there fast, it should be, I believe, more about, let's take it back a bit. Let's figure it out each step of the way. And going back to sort of the gym analogy, it's like, again, if you can lift 10 kilograms today, and you know you have to practice lifting 10 and 15 and 20 before you can get to the 100, but you want to do that 100 now. So what do? You take some performance enhancing drug that gives you the strength of 100 men or whatever, and so you take that. But here's the thing about drugs, they have side effects, right? And they don't last, so you've got to keep taking it, which means the side effects get worse and worse and worse, and before you know it, your health is ruined, your mental state is ruined, and now you can't even lift the 10 kilograms that you did before because your whole thing is ruined. So I think that there needs to be something that we kind of acknowledge, that there is a limit to how much we can have at any one time. And if we want to go beyond that limit, then we need to figure out first how to manage what we have, then figure out how to manage that bit more, then how to manage that bit more, rather than I need it and I need it now and I want it all now and I want it now. Because you could get that, and people have done it. You know, you hear about the, 19-year-old millionaire. That happens more often these days than it did 20, 30 years ago. But you hear about the 18, 19-year-old millionaire, the 20-year-old millionaire, these things happen. But to go from being poor to all of a sudden being a millionaire with no real kind of in between, and not having that practice or the mental maturity of what it means to now have that kind of money, to now have that kind of influence, to now have that kind of power, to now have people around you that pretty much leeching off you. Let's be honest, a lot of people leech off you. But outside of that, you need to have people around you need to support. You got people around you that are telling you everything you do is great all the time because now you're the guy. And what does it mean to have that? What does it mean to have people tell you everything you do is great, to gas you up all the time, to make you feel like you can't do anything wrong? Where you don't have that in between of maturing into that kind of status. We just kind of go straight from one extreme to another extreme. no real in between. And I think a lot of times, in fact, you hear about celebrities abusing their power, you hear about celebrities raping people, you hear about celebrities doing all kinds of crazy stuff with the money. And like I said about the, you know, lottery winners, and, you know, just blowing it all, you know, because I feel like there's just no real talk, there's no real emphasis on the fact that to go from one extreme to another extreme. In fact, well, I guess there is talk about that in other areas, but not when it comes to what we call success. Nobody really talks about the limits of success and how we could healthily go beyond those limits. Instead, it's always about getting there fast, and we celebrate the people who get there fast, but we don't really consider what they had to do to get there and how that impacted their mental health and what that means for them now that they're in position that they're not really ready to be in because they just got there too fast. But like I said, that's kind of a theory, kind of a philosophy, kind of a underdeveloped idea, but yeah, that's what's been on my mind for a little while. Let me know what you think of it. Drop any comments, suggestions, recommendations in the comments. Send them through and I see what I can do. Like, share, subscribe, because we're doing this thing. More videos on the screen. Check out my other channels as well. Be much appreciated. But that's going to be it for the minute. So guys, until whenever, if ever, peace.